Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome again to our first Friday of the academic year 23-24. It's actually not the first Friday, of course. That was last week, but it was Labor Day, and it's still early September. So we're all very glad that you're here. I'm Paul Teske. I'm the Dean of the School of Public Affairs. I'm looking forward to this. We have folks online as well as you folks that are here. And again, thank you for being here early on a Friday morning. I want to thank some of the spa people that make this happen. Dee Dee Flynn, our event coordinator, especially. Other folks that helped outside, Ellen, Evelyn, Lisa, and many others who make this happen. I also want to thank our caterer for today, David from Scratch Catering, in our role as an anchor institution in the Denver Anchor Network. We try to procure locally with small and when possible, minority and small businesses in the area, and that David fits that and makes a great breakfast as well. So we're delighted to have that. You may have seen in the slides that have been rolling the CU Denver land acknowledgement, which we like to touch on, the fact that the Ute, Arapaho, and Cheyenne nations had this land we're on as their ancestral homeland. And there were, of course, lots of difficult interactions and challenges that have happened over our history, and we want to acknowledge that rather than ignoring it. I want to welcome you all here today. How many of you are SPA alums? Great. How many are CU Denver alums? Great. CU Denver staff, faculty? Great. Community members? Okay. Just here for the breakfast? Do those two. And so in terms of our breakfast, we have a plan for October, I think, 6th and November, the first Fridays of those months. The October event will be jointly with DOLA, the State Department of Local Affairs. Rick Garcia will be here. And as you probably know, as good public policy wonks, there's a lot of discussion across the state about sort of state versus local power on housing and land use in particular. And do we have too much NIMBYism, and where we need more housing, we need more affordable housing, where is it going to go? And last spring, the legislature discussed some bills that would give the state more power. Those are very controversial. And so we'll talk about that and other affordable housing issues in October. In November, this is an off-year election, which means sort of Tabor and fiscal things. And Prop HH is being has been initiated by the legislature, which is a complicated way to deal with increased property taxes, but also keep more of the Tabor surplus rather than giving all of it back in refunds. And so a lot of key fiscal issues there that we'll talk about in November. I also want to note that SPA has other I think excellent events if you have time and interest. We have a criminal justice series in the evenings that this year is focusing on gun violence. And the first one, I believe later in the month, September 26th, I want to say will be with our School of Ed, and it'll be about school shootings. And our Associate Vice Chancellor for Faculty Affairs, Tehran Kayolu, has been instrumental in putting that together. And then we'll have a series of other events around gun violence. We also, our Herrick Roth series on democracy has some very exciting speakers coming in on artificial intelligence, on the state constitution. We have in November our alum who happens to be the head of FEMA, Deanne Criswell, coming to talk about sort of environmental catastrophes and disasters and climate change. And then we're going to have Senator Michael Bennet in December talking about AI and democracy and some of the things he's trying to do to regulate in that area. So a lot of exciting things. They're all on the website. There's other ways to find them, but please join us for those events when you can. The logistics for today, there's bathrooms around the corner. There's more food here. Please help yourself. It will be done at 10, but we're not kicked out of the room at that point. So if you can stay and you want to network some more or talk to some of the panelists, I will say, I know Travis needs to head up to a meeting for his day job a little bit before 10, so he'll be doing that. But please, and if you need to leave early, that's fine too. Please just do so quietly. We also, we're going to have questions from you and the online folks that are watching later in the panel, and so there'll be there should be 3x5 cards somewhere that you can write a question, and we'll have our folks come and collect those and bring them up to me, and we'll head towards those towards the end of our time. So with that, all the preamble is done. I want to move on to the panel. And I'm delighted that we have an excellent panel here today. And just to set the topic a little bit, I mean, obviously, in across the world, I think that all cities are facing challenges as we come out of COVID, right? Big cities in particular, because in some ways, cities, what makes them special places is people come together, they're dense, and people work and play in close interaction, and COVID screwed that up for 3 years. And it also, though, changed our mindset, I think, about where to work, when to work, how to work, hybrid meetings, in-person meetings, and of course, COVID's not done. I've surprised by how many people I've talked to recently who are getting it or still have it. But it's definitely made cities challenging and downtowns, and it has kind of forced us to rethink what are our cities about, how do they work, and for those of you that work or live in downtown Denver like we do here, it's a different place than it was 3 years ago. The Denver Downtown Partnership does some data, and foot traffic is picking up, and maybe more in Denver than some places. But I think combined with, we've also had the 16th Street Mall torn up, and it that's kind of a mess right now. So the heart of things doesn't feel like it used to, and so for a new mayor and a new city council, there's a lot of challenges that are tougher than they were before. And again, they're not unique to Denver, but they're the ones we face here. And also for many of us, from about last January through June, most things we were focusing on were the elections, right? We have, I think, the good fortune of public financing for our elections now, and there were a lot of candidates. CU Denver and SPA sponsored a debate between Mayor Johnston and Kelly Brough back in April. There were 17 candidates who started, or even more, of which Debbie Ortega here is one for mayor, and there were 10 candidates for the 2 at-large city council seats. So very highly contested elections, and a lot of focus on that. And Joe on our panel covered a lot of that. But then some people won, and others didn't. And so Mike Johnston is our new mayor. He's been in office for about 50 days. And we have a new city council. And for those who don't know, or you're new to Denver, we have 13 city council people, 2 at large, 11 by district, and about half of them are new. 9 of the 13 are women, 6 are Latinas. And so it's a new council as well. And so we wanted to kind of, look at the rollout of what Mayor Johnston is doing and how it looks so far. What are the issues? How are things shaping out? And so we put together, I think, a terrific panel that I'm excited to have here. By the way, we did invite Mayor Johnston himself. His schedule was too busy, but we hope to have him maybe for another event somewhere down the line. And also, I don't know if we can get it up on the screen. There was a very recent poll. There's a new Colorado Polling Institute, Curtis Hubbard and others are involved with. And 2 weeks ago, I think they asked 400 and some Denver citizens, what are your big issues that need to be addressed? And I think it's maybe not surprising. I think it's the last one of, here it is, the green lines, right? So what are the top issues that need to be addressed? Homelessness, 51%. Driving in today, I drove by a homeless encampment near the post office on 20th Avenue. There's a lot. Housing affordability, which I read as sort of, not homelessness, but it's still tough to live in Denver for virtually anybody who hasn't been here a long time. Crime and public safety, third issue, general cost of living, and then some others. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. So just quickly introducing the panel. On the far right is Travis Leiker. Travis is an undergrad alum of Boulder, an MPA alum of the School of Public Affairs that we're proud to say. His day job is working in advancement at CU Anschutz. He ran for the at-large seat that 10 other people ran for, came very close, but didn't win. And he's also run the Capitol Hill United Neighbors neighborhood group for a number of years, and been involved with reproductive rights and other nonprofit issues in major ways. So we're very happy to have Travis with us. Next to Travis is Debbie Ortega. Debbie was for 12 years one of the 2 at-large city council people, and very influential in city politics. As I said, ran for ran for mayor. And it's been involved in Denver politics for a very long time in a number of different roles. And so we're delighted that Debbie can be here. Closer to me is Joe Rubino. Joe is also a CU Boulder undergraduate graduate, has written for a number of media outlets, has won awards, and is currently with the Denver Post and covering City Hall. And other beats, I'm sure. But so that's our panel, and I'm going to start with some general questions and then focus in a little there. I hope they'll have some dialogue with each other, and then we'll get to your questions. So first of all, I'm just curious for each of you, what has struck you in the first couple of months of the new administration, or maybe surprised you, or what are the things that you would say about what's happened so far? Maybe we'll start with Joe and just go down.
I'm not a broadcast guy. You all hear me? Well, I think Mike Johnston really staked his candidacy. I mean, part of it was he also had more money than anybody else by a long shot. But solving homelessness in 4 years, that's a big promise, right? And maybe one that when you make it is perhaps unattainable. You hope it's attainable. But he ran on this like dream big, right? Let's go big. Whereas perhaps, other candidates were a little more like down to earth, like more realistic. So he comes out, and it's what I hear from a lot of constituents right away is they're very impressed with the energy, right? And I think he had to do that to deliver on that big promise. So he comes out, he declares the emergency declaration, and the man is everywhere. He's always been tireless. He's in great shape. He runs circles around me. So I think he's impressing people with his energy. It's a lot going on all at once. It's, kind of seeing how it's going to come together over the next few months. So he set a very big goal in the first 5 months of his mayorship. And who knows, this could really be a defining moment just in the first year. So that's what's really struck me is the amount of energy and just how he's come out. And, he didn't back away from the big promises he made on the campaign trail. In fact, he's doubled down in a sense, right? Bringing 1,000 people inside by the end of the year. So that's what struck me. And that's what I hear about the most from readers and constituents is the energy, right? He's at town halls, it seems like every night, one or two at times.
So I think a couple of things. Mayor Johnston does need to be commended for his follow through on his commitment. A lot of people are waiting to see when those appointments are going to be coming forward. Some of the cabinet people that were holdovers have left. So, you have leaderless agencies that have staff who typically are the people that get the job done, but they're waiting to see who their next boss is going to be. All of those appointments have to be approved by City Council. City Council is, 6 new members, almost half of the council. A lot of them are just trying to figure out, the job and where and how they can be effective. Obviously, they've all been assigned to different committees. I've met with several of them. I was actively involved in supporting some of them that got elected. And, I think they're just trying to navigate through the process and figure out when the timing is right to push the kinds of things they felt were important and why they ran to serve on City Council. One member is actually interested in bringing back an issue that I worked on, and that was the issue of railroad safety. So we met, shared all the information. One of my former staff members and I, who worked on that project. And I don't know what the timing is of when this council person intends to bring that forward, but I think, the lay of the land is what they're trying to learn and understand. And I think to some degree, that's part of what Mayor Johnston is doing, and trying to ensure that he's got the right people in each of those cabinet positions, because the work that the agencies do is critical to the image and the role that the mayor plays in our city of helping get things done. And no doubt, homelessness is our #1 challenge and problem, especially for our downtown. And it's a problem that we all have to work together to solve. Otherwise, it will continue to have a negative impact on our downtown. And none of us want to see that happen. We've already lost too many businesses down here. I know residents who have been in downtown for a long, long time. Many of them want to leave. And the safety of people coming to downtown is critical. And so all of these issues are interrelated. Solving affordable housing and how we, move to attract businesses to our city, especially when they're businesses relocating from other cities and paying higher wage jobs. And there needs to be some balance and some approach to ensuring that everybody is contributing towards that affordable housing solution. So when we're attracting businesses, I don't know how many of you followed the Telluride ruling when all of that happened, but Telluride, I think they had it right when they were trying to ask businesses who were, coming to their city and they were building new housing development to incorporate housing for their workforce. Because any of you who've been to our mountain community, you know that when it snows really bad, those workers live so far away, many of them couldn't get to work. And they felt like it was a critical part of their city being able to work right. So I think, again, it's all interrelated, and however we can collectively play a role in solving some of these issues and working with our city council and our mayor, our city will be much better for it.
Thanks, Debbie. Travis?
Well, first I want to say good morning to everybody who's online and also in the crowd, and just say thank you so much for showing up on a Friday morning to have a conversation with us about the future of the city and county of Denver. A couple of things that I've been struck with respect to the new mayor and administration is the energy and vigor, to echo some of the sentiments that have already been shared. The energy and vigor that has been brought to the table as it relates to big picture visioning and thinking and aspirational goals for the city and county of Denver. Another item, and I was on the mayor's transition team focused on community planning and development, so the nuts and bolts as it relates to permitting, zoning, site development plans for new development. And what I was struck with was the intentional efforts to be focused on community engagement in an open and transparent process. I would also echo what Debbie shared with respect to appointments. By my estimation, there's about 225 vacancies that remain unappointed or transition or in positions in transition as it relates to what the mayor has purview over. And I think that that's where the rubber is really going to meet the road in terms of how we move forward as a city. It's identifying people who are competent, skilled, job ready, and innovative thinkers who are going to be ready for the job on day one, but aren't going to get mired in analysis paralysis. And it's very easy to get there at the city level when it comes to everything from traffic calming to zoning to liquor licensing and the like. And so what we need people who are subject matter experts, but also big picture thinkers in those positions that the mayor trusts and knows and has certainty and confidence in to do the job and to do it well right away. Because what keeps me up at night in the context of the future of the Mile High City is too much delay. As we heard from Dean Teske with respect to homelessness and the encampments, time is not on our side as it relates to those people who are living on the streets. If you're concerned about lighting in College View Park over on the west side of Denver, like I heard from many neighbors, because there's not sufficient lighting and safety in their park, that's something that we need to be thinking about. And so the constituents and the citizenry are ready for action. And so the transition period is sort of on its way to sunset. And now it's who's going to be doing the work day to day and making sure that it's getting done effectively. And so that's something I'm keeping an eye on.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've been a little surprised myself by the seeming slowness of some of the naming of the top cabinet people, especially for such a well-organized, energetic person that Mike Johnston is and his operation. But I'm sure that'll start rolling out, and it's good to know that 200 people still need to be named. So let's jump into some of the issues then, and start with Travis and work down the line the other way. So homelessness, as I watch the debates and discussions in the election, it is in some ways the top issue. It's such a tough issue, right? And no city has really solved it. And I'm just surprised sometimes when people are so confident about their approach. And the approaches vary, I think, from being most concerned about the mental health of the homeless folks, but also the physical health of the city, the impacts on small businesses that the encampments might be near. I mean, there's a lot of complexity, and whether to get people off the streets sooner or improve their conditions on the streets all seem like really tough issues. But Travis, what are your thoughts about how Mayor Johnston is proceeding with the emergency declaration and some of the other ideas and how that might work?
Well, homelessness is a really complex topic. So some of the things that I appreciate is, yes, the emergency declaration, and part of that is freeing up the mayor to do work more swiftly, absent some of the other agencies and certainly council, but those also have a shelf life. And so what I'm looking for in terms of next phases of this mayoral administration is, one, delivery of services, wraparound services, and that's including contracting with those direct service providers, like the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, like the Gathering Place, and other providers throughout the city, to make sure that they are well resourced enough and have the tools that they need to help deploy services to those who are in crisis. Two, we have some real opportunity and flexibility with some of the mayor's vision concerning tiny home villages, as well as safe outdoor spaces. One of the things that I worked on when I was president of Capitol Hill is piloting the two in partnership with a handful of other RNOs and business improvement districts, as well as the Colorado Village Collaborative, to onboard and pilot two safe outdoor spaces with clear parameters and clear guidelines and clear concern for neighborhood safety, but also, as I was alluding to earlier, not getting in the way of success and not getting mired in analysis paralysis. And we did that, and those two programs and pilot sites were quite successful. Something else that I think that this mayor is going to have to really think about is the acquisition of property for the purposes of transitional housing for those who are unhoused, but also affordable housing. We did not know that the pandemic was on the horizon, but it happened. And I think prior to the pandemic, in my view, it was sort of a let the good times roll in the city and county of Denver. The economy is rocking and rolling. We've got a bountiful services and providers. Contracting seemed to be pretty efficient, but then it was sort of pandemic happened. Now, where's everybody going to go? And in that time, how many hotels went vacant? How many properties did not go activated? And I think, and yes, certainly it is easy to Monday morning quarterback, but that's the stuff that we can't lose sight on, because now we know post-pandemic, workforce is changing, more people are at home, commercial spaces are vacant, they could be activated, and hotels and accommodations are changing. And so now is the time for the city to do a sweeping, holistic view of vacant properties that could be acquired for those who are unhoused, activating other pieces of real estate, either city-owned property or other public properties for the purposes of safe outdoor spaces, and then ensuring that we're contracting with the right direct service providers to make sure that they're providing the direct services that the unhoused need swiftly and nimbly. And I think that that's why these appointments and why these operational efficiencies are absolutely paramount at this time.
Travis, yeah, I know you've worked on this. About a lot.
So one of my past jobs with the city was the director for the Homeless Commission under John Hickenlooper, when we had our 10-year plan to end homelessness. And, a lot happened during that time. And one of the things I learned and realized is there is no one-size-fits-all solution, because people who find themselves in a situation of homelessness are as diverse as the rest of us. And so there have to be different approaches and solutions that meet people where they're at. So I also am the board president of a nonprofit housing development organization that houses people from 0 to 30% of the area median income. And we're part of the One Home program. So anybody that receives HUD funding that serves that segment of our population gets plugged into that One Home system. And you've got your service providers and the outreach workers that identify homeless individuals that need housing, that are ready to get into housing. And then you've got the nonprofits who own the units. And when there is an available unit, it gets matched with the person that's at the front of the line. They do not pay attention to the fact that that person may need wraparound services, and this agency may not have wraparound services, but because you're at the front of the line, they get put together. And that has done a disservice to the individual and to the nonprofit and the property and all the people that live in that unit. So we have to be looking at a couple of things, because HUD does not allow a nonprofit, for example, to say, okay, if we're going to take this 0 to 30 AMI person that just came off the streets and they need mental health services and substance abuse treatment, then we want to make sure that person is getting what they need. HUD does not allow you to do that. And that's one of the challenges and problems. And that's something we've tried to tackle with MDHI, the Metro Denver Homeless Initiative, which is the One Home continuum of care vehicle, and with HUD. And if not, we need to engage our congressional delegation, because all of that is at the crux of what happens in some of these properties where we've built new projects. We've got people in units, but if they're allowed to just continue to do their drugs on site, bring their friends in, you know, turn a property upside down, that's a challenge for our communities. And so those are some of the solutions and issues we need to work with. We also need to make sure that Denver is not trying to solve this problem for the whole metro area. This is a national epidemic, right? It's happening in cities across the country. It's exacerbated because of the deadly drugs that are on our streets today. When the pharmaceutical companies got sued and the drug dealers could no longer get Sudafed as the base for meth, the producers of these drugs started putting chemicals, nasty chemicals that are causing severe mental illness among people who are taking these drugs that are very, very addictive. And that is part of what has challenged cities across the country, where you've seen this proliferation of homeless people on the street. And, you know, that is, if you have not read Sam Quinones's writings that have been in the Atlantic, he wrote a book all about his work across the country, talking to everybody that deals with this issue. He also lived in Mexico for 10 years and saw what happened with the production of these drugs. And the one thing that stuck in my mind when I read all of his work was the drugs that are on the streets today are causing people to just decay on our streets. Fentanyl is killing them. This other drug that now is laced with every kind of chemical is causing people to live on our streets that are not thinking rationally for themselves. So we got to deal with how we keep these drugs out of our communities from a metropolitan perspective, and then how we're working to solve this problem from housing to services from a metropolitan perspective. And there are efforts. So the governor is working to open up the Ridgeview site, which is in Arapahoe County. It was a boys' detention school, sits on 500 acres of state-owned land. Can you imagine how much housing could be put there? Then we've got the Fort Logan site in the city of Denver. There's a site I've been working on in Weld County that could serve about 600 people. So we talk about how each community should be doing all these things. We're getting opioid abatement money. Denver has $40 million a year of mental health dollars. All of these are so fragmented. If there's a way we could pull some of these resources together and look at a way that cities who also have some of these same resources, could work together to solve the needs, then we're having the kind of impact we need to have where people are at, and not expecting everybody to just send their people to downtown Denver and expect the Denver taxpayers to cover the cost of this expense.
Debbie, Joe, your perspective on the homeless?
Well, fragmented was a good word. You talked about, I mean, how complex that is, right? So we're talking about Mike Johnston trying to come up with a handful, 7, 10 sites to put people in these micro communities. That is the crux, and that's the first step in his process, right? And that alone is going to be a huge effort. I think it was Robin Knich had said all the easy sites are gone, right? There's no more parking lots behind the Human Services building where you can put a micro community. Now you're going into communities. I've been at community meetings for Golden Triangle. They feel like they've given enough, right? There's 2 sites that are cited in their neighborhood right now. They're, possible sites. It's not for sure, but they're already between Denver Health and the jail. They already see all kinds of impacts. So even if, we move past that and you get the people in those communities, then you have to provide the services. I know there's a huge concern. You didn't heard the really tight job market. It's hard to attract people. It's hard to attract people to work at a homeless shelter. Yeah. Talk about 24-hour services at these micro communities. That's going to be a real challenge. To bring it back around to the appointments, he's got an interim head of hopes right now. I mean, that is the most critical agency for what he's going to be doing. And I know Sue Powers and I respect her a lot. She's a very smart woman, but that's going to be a position where you need somebody that's going to be there for the long term. Britta Fisher really made some inroads under Michael Hancock. He, really earned some respect from some of the other service providers that, perhaps felt the administration had overlooked them in the past. So it's going to be a real challenge. And Mayor Johnston has admitted, and it's, he said there's a lot of ways to fail with this plan, and that's absolutely correct. So I think the big thing I'll be looking out for, you can all circle it on your calendar, same as me. The budget is due on October 15th, and your budget is your values, as they say. So we're going to see this fiscal year was record spending on housing and homelessness resolution. And a lot of that came from ARPA. Like, those are one-time funds. It's not going to be there long-term. Taxpayers have, put their money where their mouth is on this. There's $40+ million a year in a dedicated sales tax for homelessness resolution. So we're going to see. I mean, you get the people on the site. That's actually the easiest part. It's how you then help them deal with these synthetic drugs, deal with these mental health challenges. How do you build enough affordable housing? You don't have enough affordable housing for the people that aren't home, right? You don't have enough affordable housing for the low income folks already. So it's going to be a lot. And I'm curious how the Johnston administration is going to take that next step up the ladder, assuming they get this first step right.
So one of the things I want to add to this conversation is that we, the city, have spent over $250 million trying to solve homelessness in our city. We have not taken our workforce arm and looked at how we connect that to people who we've been housing for 2.5 years. We've stabilized their lives. So helping them get back to employment, having an exit plan, having performance-based contracts are all part of what I think really moves the needle in helping people get to a place where they can help themselves. And I understand not everybody is in a situation where they can take advantage of that. We know some people have had such, health issues that they will never be able to work a full-time job. Some can work a part-time job. We have organizations like Bayard Enterprises that works with people with disabilities and helps them access part-time employment. But one of the things I saw as the director of the Denver Road Home Program was when we got people housed, it changed everything for that individual. They no longer felt invisible. They felt a sense of pride and purpose in what they were doing. And they felt like they were a part of something bigger than themselves. And I think giving people hope with the kinds of programs that we're talking about, that there is an exit plan that is helping move them back to self-sufficiency, has to be part of what we're doing in the big picture effort so that we are making a difference in the lives of these people. Because when you look at how much money has been spent, we've grown a lot of organization. We have one that CEO whose budget is primarily public dollars makes $1 million a year. In my mind, you know, we need accountability with the use of taxpayer dollars in how we're making sure that we are helping move people out of that situation and giving them hope. And that's one of the things I used to hear from homeless individuals was, oh, this is just going to be another Band-Aid approach, you know? And so those are some of the things that I think collectively, city council, the mayor, our community, our service providers, all need to be working toward as we try to solve this problem.
That's great. Thank you. Travis?
Yeah, I want to piggyback on this point with respect to compensation for some of the service providers and contracting. As concerned citizens of Denver or even in the metro, take a fine look. It's not a fun read, but take a fine look at some of the contracts and the compensation and some of the deliverables for some of the nonprofits that are getting the lion's share of city resources to do this work. Not that that's bad circumstance, but there are other organizations that are smaller, more nimble, more efficient with their resources that we have got to look at supplying some resources to. When I was president of Capitol Hill United Neighborhoods, I was pushing the then Mayor Hancock administration to think creatively about deploying city resources to those smaller groups that could have activated some of their spaces for the purposes of temporary housing for those who are unhoused during the pandemic and especially during the very cold and very hot months of the year. And those pieces of feedback didn't really materialize in any substantive policy or outcomes. And so we have got to benefit and support and prop up through public resources those nonprofits that, again, are in really good positions to effectively deploy those resources, provide the wraparound service, provide the temporary housing, support via food pantries and the like. And we have to reform the contracting process within the city and county of Denver. I know direct service providers that operate in the city and county of Denver who bring in, essentially import patients for mental health services, crisis support, substance abuse treatment, and the like, because providing services to Denverites are just too hard because the contracting processes with the city are just too challenging. And so there's the operational piece, reforming the contracting systems. There's the funding piece, supporting those nonprofits that are effectively positioned to deploy those resources efficiently. And then also there's the management piece. And we have to be looking at those who are good at operating organizations and making sure that those well-oiled machines are supported effectively through the city.
Great, thank you. Lots of complexity on this issue for sure. And I want to dig in a little bit to a related issue. And Debbie mentioned the drug and some of the criminal aspects of related to homelessness, but also crime on its own has been up, not only in Denver, but in many places around the country. And the perception of crime, again, this survey, it's one of the biggest priorities, and that ranges from increasing murder and shootings, and including high level, school shootings and other things that get a lot of publicity. But also, we had a big catalytic converter theft in automobiles in the neighborhoods, bicycle theft, and all kinds of things. And there's a sense maybe in a lot of cities that the balance of being tough on crime and that we've done that in the past, it hasn't always worked. And since at least George Floyd and other aspects where we don't want to put as many people in jail, and we're becoming more sensitive to the racial and income aspects of that. But what, if you're the new mayor and the new council, what are you thinking about in terms of crime? I know we have the STAR program that tries to bring the mental health approach in when that makes sense, but what are you seeing and hearing on the crime issue? We can start with Joe.
Well, because so much of Mayor Johnston's agenda so far has been driven by homelessness, I'm seeing it at the encampments. And I think they sent co-responders to the encampment that they swept most recently, the one where there was a shooting. And I think the suspect ended up not being a resident of the encampment. But Mayor Johnston said on the campaign trail, he was gonna hire 200 new, and he didn't say police officers, he said first responders that could do things on various levels, right? So visible policing certainly is gonna be a big part of it. I know that the Hancock administration really made a point of walking around the convention center because you have to make the convention customers feel safe, right? There was too many times where it showed up on Twitter and people were saying, oh, you can't go to Denver, it's unsafe. The mayor has to kind of market the city in the same way. So I'm wondering how that's going to manifest with the Johnston administration. There's definitely was a lot of talk. It felt like Chief Thompson kind of got Thomas, pardon me. Thank you. He got elevated at the end of Mayor Hancock's tenure, but he seems to have a rapport with Mayor Johnston. They seem to be kind of walking side by side on this issue with homelessness. You see Chief Thomas at a lot of these homelessness events. I think the reason, and he said it as much when he declared the state of emergency, visible homelessness creates that perception of safety, right, or the lack thereof. Addressing visible homelessness encampments first and foremost, I think it's getting so much attention because it is the cascading effect. It is economic development. It is public safety. Recruiting for those 200 positions, whatever they are, is going to be another challenge. It's the same as staffing the micro communities with mental health professionals. I think our last class out of the academy was fewer than 70. You tell me, but with ample openings, right? He wants to grow the force. There's room to grow the force, but we can't even fill the positions. The city threw $8 million at that this year in its budget. So I don't know what you do about that, frankly. I will say I haven't had my catalytic converter stolen, but somebody did get into my car and steal my phone charger. So I've joined the Capitol Hill kind of club of having a recent theft.
Thanks, Debbie. Your thoughts?
So, a lot of the conversation is about homelessness and the perception of crime, but the crime that's happening in our city is well beyond the homeless community. I mean, the shootings, the presence of guns in our schools among our youth. I mean, I think one of the efforts that Councilwoman Sawyer initiated with a council person in Aurora was the gun buyback program, and trying to get guns off of our streets and out of the hands, especially of our youth, has to be a metro-wide effort. The mayor's part of the Metro Mayor Caucus. You have CML, the Colorado Municipal League, and what's the other one? CCI, Colorado Counties. So, you have these vehicles where regionally people come together, and then you have Dr. Cog as well, where they come together to talk about some of these overlapping issues. And these are things that I think, Denver often takes the lead on some of these things. These are some of the issues I think we need to work on through some of the task forces that already exist, some of the crime task force that are in place to try to keep drugs out of our communities, try to keep guns out of our communities. But we need to do that from a unified approach. I think that regional piece is a part that has been missing in a way that has not been as comprehensive in the approach to address some of the crime element that is happening. Yes, some of that happens at the homeless encampments, but make no doubt that part of what happens is a lot of our homeless are being preyed upon by people who come and blend in among them and are part of the drug dealers that are pushing these deadly drugs. And in some cases, they get people who are homeless to help push them because they're getting free drugs as well. But that is not the isolation to the big picture problem that we're seeing. And if we can get the drugs and the guns out of our city and have this message that Colorado is off the map for people who want to come and do their crime and their illegal activities, I think that will begin to have this ripple effect that people will want to go somewhere else and not come to Colorado. But we have to be unified in that approach to make a difference.
Great. Thank you. Travis?
Well, I think it's important for folks to not necessarily conflate homeless encampments with spikes in crime. Yes, homeless encampments do have a presence of crime, sometimes very violent crime. So we've talked pretty at length in terms of helping those who are unhoused. But what I am particularly interested in and focused on are those 200 or so vacancies within DPD. And I think, yes, while the current administration has been very careful to qualify or not qualify what the recruits are going to look like and where we're going to be staffing, I think that that's a unique opportunity for us to staff up with respect to DPD to make sure that we're recruiting a diverse, talented workforce, innovative thinkers, promoting from within those who are changing and shifting the culture to make sure that we're addressing some of those other systemic issues that you brought up, Dean Teske. Something else that I think we need to focus on is one of my dear friends who used to be the mayor of a municipality once told me, and I think it's apropos here, is when Denver catches a cold, the region gets sick. And what we need to be thinking about is working across county lines and city boundaries with our other municipalities. And for some who may not have followed this, the inclination for reciprocity as it relates to public safety with the city of Aurora is a little fractured. So we've got some relationships to repair on a regional level to make sure that we're promoting more public safety. And I would be remiss if I did not mention Denver Health. We are very lucky to have Denver Health as part of our first responder ecosystem in the city and county of Denver. And for almost 20 years, and I might have to get fact checked on this by the councilwoman and my friend from the Denver Post, for almost 20 years, the budgetary increase for Denver Health has gone nowhere. But they're still expected to provide uncompensated care to those who are suffering from emergencies, suffering from mental health crises, et cetera. But the city and county of Denver hasn't placed any more resourcing into the Denver Health. But they're expected to still be on the front lines of some of our most significant crises in the city. And so something that we also need to do is, as part of this recruitment and retention effort with DPD, we have to be thinking about it across the public safety first responder ecosystem to make sure we're supporting our firefighters, supporting our paramedics, compensating our physicians and our nurses appropriately at Denver Health, and also giving them the political supports that they need in council chambers as well as the mayor's office to make sure that they are successful. And the same is true for DPD.
I just want to make sure that when we talk about safety, we don't leave the sheriff's department out, because they're the people that have to house the folks that are incarcerated in our jail system. And they are only at 60% of their strength. And we have people that are working mandatory overtime that are experiencing burnout. And one of the things that happened under Mayor Hickenlooper was they changed the pay and benefit package from the rule of 75 to the rule of 85. So what that means is it's your years of service and your age that equals that before you could retire and collect your full pension. And so when you have some deputy sheriffs that realize they have to be working in the jail till they're in their 60s, that assumes they started very young, they realize that they don't have the physical stamina to be able to do that job. And a lot of them come, get trained by Denver, and then go to neighboring jurisdictions or other states and are able to do lateral transfers. And so we're spending a lot of money training people that we hope to retain, but I think we need to have some contractual agreements with people as they come on, with some hope and expectation that they're going to stay for a period of time before, so that we don't just waste that money on that training. So that's another critical piece of the big picture here.
Thanks, Debbie. Those are great points.
I will note one thing I read in the transition committee reports for both DPD and the sheriff's department was we need big raises if we want to grow these departments. That was in both reports. Like, we need to move them up to top of scale for the region, and that's not
So
the case.
Thank you. It's interesting. I'm hearing a theme of not having the person power trained that we need, and that's something hopefully the School of Public Affairs can help with. We have criminal justice units, but yes, that's compounding the problem. Great. Well, I know Travis needs to run in a bit, so I want to ask him first. One of the other questions in this poll for citizens recently was, is Denver on the right track or wrong track? And it was about half said right track and about half said wrong track. And so, Travis, you mentioned earlier, before the pandemic, it seemed like Denver was on a roll. 12-year mayor Michael Hancock was, enjoying a lot of the fruits of that. And then the pandemic hit and some other things that made our city much more complicated and these challenges much more difficult. So what if, Mike Johnston has a bully pulpit as mayor? He's a pretty articulate guy. I mean, what kind of early wins, certainly the homeless emergency, if we can see fewer tents on the streets, that's probably going to feel better. But what else can he do to kind of revitalize downtown and get more people thinking that we're on the right track rather than the wrong track?
Ooh, that's a big question. And my time is a little more flexible, so
Okay.
we could go a little longer, or I can. Well, so if I were to assess the city, right track, wrong track, I'd be right at 50, because the city's working well for those who are the haves, where resources are plentiful for you, community safety, you have access to parks and open space, et cetera, et cetera. And then the city is not working well for a lot of other folks. And so early wins focus on getting big projects done. The convention center, revitalizing the Denver Center for Performing Arts, ensuring that DIA is completed soon in terms of its, I'm cautiously optimistic on that. And I think also customer service. We've got, and it's not a sexy topic to talk about, but when you're calling 911 and you're on hold for 30 seconds, 1 minute, that is not good customer service. And again, we haven't even talked about our 911 operators and how they need to be compensated more, and we need to step up. So let's give them a shout out as well. So improving customer service, investing more in 311 to make sure that we have a responsive customer service process and system for those who are of varying ages, of varying technological backgrounds, and have the capacity to reach out to the city if they need supports. I think also just some of the basic, again, not very sexy, but very elemental components of running a city. Is your trash being collected on time? Are your roads? I see some heads shaking no in the crowd. No, it's not. So I think it's getting back to basics and doing what the city does and doing it really well, but also not losing sight on the big picture visioning to make sure that we get back on the map, ranging from international flights to conventions to innovative thought leadership and recruiting new businesses to the Mile High City. I think there's ways to tackle the mechanics, but also the big picture vision.
Great. Thanks, Travis. Debbie, your thoughts on that? Getting back on the right track?
Yeah, so you talked earlier about, our downtown and what people want to see happen. There's a lot of discussion about whether or not some of our vacant commercial buildings should be converted to residential. That's not going to be the affordable residential because of the price of the land, right? But I think it's looking at how we solve some of the challenges in the permit office, not just for big projects. We worked with somebody, it took them 9 months to get a demolition permit that was just dealing with a dilapidated back porch, and they needed a permit to demolish it. And it took 9 months. That's ridiculous. I think we need to work with the mayor and city council. Denver is a front-facing entity, unlike some of our other businesses we have in the community, that requires people to be back to work. And a lot of people are still working 2 days in the office. When you have a permit office that should be fully staffed 5 days a week, you got to have people there. People show up to get their permits, and how do you make things happen? It's all interrelated in terms of, you know, people being able to get the permits they need to, you know, build a carport or, you know, pour concrete or whatever the small house project is that you're trying to get done, to the big projects, you know, and some of those are city projects. We have concessionaires that are still waiting to get their permits to open their space. Some of them were awarded spaces back to when the Great Hall project was identified and still haven't been given their space. So it's some of those kinds of details that we have to pay attention to, because when you're not, everything else just seems to fall apart. And one of my pet peeves is 311. I don't know how many of you use 311, but there needs to be a re-look at that system and the kinds of responses that people get, because it's like calling and it just falls into a deep dark hole. And you never get a response back. You gotta, you know, keep your number, you know, the whatever you call it, the ticket number, to keep calling back, but you don't really get a response. And, you know, so people's default is they'll call their council person, but, you know, you no longer have a system where you can connect with a person because everything goes through 311. And, you know, when I had my council office during COVID, we were the only council office that actually had a staff person there during COVID. And we had people coming through the city and county building that had walked through the web building, couldn't find a person, couldn't find anybody at City Hall, stumbled into our office, and were just at their wits' end trying to figure out where they could go to get the resources and services they needed. So getting people back to work to help our communities deal with multiple issues that our agencies address and provide is a critical part of getting our city back on track.
Awesome. Thank you. Joe, right track?
Yeah, definitely. I think Travis and Debbie called this out very accurately. It is about like customer service. It's the cleanup, right? You know, past mayors, you know, notably Pena and certainly Hickenlooper and Hancock got to campaign on like big visions, like we're going to do this big infrastructure project and that's going to really drive investment. And now we're this big city with all these things that are half done, and Johnston comes in and it's kind of, you know, at a certain point, he's going to get to cut some ribbons on some stuff that started under his predecessor, as a lot of mayors do. But in the meantime, he's really got to focus on that customer service thing. And I hate to keep hitting, it feels like I'm hitting the same like sour note every time. There's a retention issue. If you order people back to the office, you're going to lose staff. Like I saw him face that issue on the campaign trail, right? City employees were like, well, like my predecessor or my boss isn't in the office all the time. Why do I have to be there 5 days a week? And there are, you know, it's a competitive labor market. How do you get people that want to work in the permit office and provide that good customer service? That's a really tough issue. How do you walk that fine line, you know, compensate them, make it a place they want to work? And you know, you see Mayor Johnston do a lot of that, or rah, right? Like, you know, he asked us all to take an oath during his inaugural address, right? Like we're here to serve the city of Denver. And it's a great thought. It's aspirational, but like, how do you get that buy-in? One of the few times I've kind of heard him, I wouldn't say whine, but like sort of lament his situation. Like, you know, did we really have to have DIA and 16th Street Mall under construction at the same time? And that's federal dollars coming down for 16th Street. It's just kind of tough. I will say some of what I've heard, you know, outside of government offices, there is some optimism. It's going to take a while, but what's coming for 16th Street, a reimagined 16th Street could be really cool. You saw a lot of mayoral candidates talk about like trying to attract some local businesses, local brands that could be a real showcase for our city. I think that's like starting to percolate, but there's going to be short-term pain. So I think for the short term, the smartest move, and really the only move that might be available to this administration, is to really focus on better customer service. And trash pickup's starting to get more on time, so Dottie tells me.
Okay.
Maybe someday you'll get that compost bin.
I'm still waiting for my green bin.
My parents too. I hear it all the time.
Yeah, that's a challenge. I'd just say too, the Larimer Square has also been going through some
Yeah.
changes,
Yeah.
right, with new ownership and just
Right.
being nearby and dropping over there for lunch. It doesn't feel the same either. So with about 10 minutes left, we'll jump to some audience questions. Whoever wants to jump in on these, and maybe they're hard questions, but maybe quick answers so we can get through a few. One is about a likely ballot initiative for transit and transportation in 2024. And mass transit's had a struggle through COVID in terms of funding, but there's also some federal money coming through. There's a lot of new bike lanes I see happening in Denver and some changes there. But what do you expect to see in terms of transit and infrastructure rolling out in the next couple of years?
I just want to say, while the 80% federal dollars are still available, we need to be looking at what kinds of projects Denver can get teed up to access those resources, because I saw numerous opportunities that we just passed up that we should have been seeking those dollars for. And again, these are ARPA funds that will be running out, but there were multi-billion dollars of money available for transportation projects across the country. And other states were getting more than their share of those dollars, and we were not going after it. So I would love, before we go back to the taxpayer and say, put more money into this, I'd love to see us work collectively as a region where those gaps exist, to close those gaps and try to solve that by having us work together and submit an application as a region, as opposed to just each city on their own trying to do that.
I love the regional theme. Thanks.
I would suggest the school to have maybe a forum with folks on the RTD board, maybe to talk about what we could do on the regional level. But there have been a couple of policy papers authored around the potential and cost implications for a more hyper-local bus transit system for the city and county of Denver, which is achievable and not insurmountable from a cost standpoint. I think it goes back to, again, do we have the bandwidth and do we have the operational capacity to take on more new infrastructure, like something like that? I would be mindful of and reluctant to support, something that creates undue bureaucracy. I think what we're seeing with workforce retention and hiring is we're experiencing some growing pains, and we're having a hard time recruiting our top talent as it is. So I would be reluctant to support something, should I be in a position of influence, something that's going to create some undue bureaucracy that we can't deliver on. And I think that's what we're sort of witnessing now in the context of some of these other big projects.
Transportation's been so interesting to have things like the free fare summer, pretty much July and August, and then you have entire lines of the train that you can't catch, right? You can't get back from Fiddler's Green. So how, the places where I've seen like community response that's really caught my eye, the Viva Streets thing seemed to be a huge success, right? And bike lane proliferation, I know the bike lobby's really been tough on city government. It's never enough. The infrastructure needs to be safer. We have a major problem with transit safety, roadway safety. But we have more and more lanes all the time. You see more and more use. I'm curious, how the Johnston administration might try to carry that forward. In terms of regionalism, RTD, you can't get around like that. It's broken. What do you do? Because they are still your provider. Like, is there a way to invest in it in a way that turns it around? That'll be a huge question. So much of Denver, the breakdown in regionalism over the last couple of years has been striking, where we have a city government that's created its own internal transportation department now, right? So it's almost like the residents are getting sick of waiting for regional cooperation to pay off. And now they're asking the city. It seems like every time there's a new sales tax passed, that people are just asking more of the city all the time. And I think that's kind of where we're starting to see some cracks form, right? You can't quite deliver on all the things that are being asked by the voters. They want these things and they think the city can deliver. They're willing to fund it. Can the city deliver?
Okay.
I think the potential for Front Range Rail to move forward and provide the connections from Fort Collins all the way down to Pueblo could be part of a solution in addressing some of the job needs in our city. but being able to just provide part of that connectivity as well. That will get people out of their cars that are already commuting, but I think it could be a big part of how we solve some of the workforce supply issues.
Awesome. Okay, another question. Denver Public Schools is not under the control of the mayor. It has a separate elected board. It's in a fragile state right now, I'd say. We have elections coming up. We've had high-profile school shootings. We have a pretty big movement to push resignations on the board. And Mike Johnston, in his state senate role, was very active in school finance and other school issues, school policy. Should he or how should he deal with the DPS issues, given that he doesn't have direct control over them? Travis, maybe.
I would need another 20 minutes.
Yeah.
To share my. Well, I guess let's see what happens with these school board races and that are coming up, because I think this hopefully is an opportunity for us to hit reset in terms of how DPS is functioning. So pay attention to the school board races, ask those tough questions, and make sure that you're getting clear answers and direction from your potential school board members as well as current school board members.
Okay.
There are issues in the city budget that overlap with DPS. The city school coordinating committee that was created by ordinance under Mayor Webb met sporadically. It was the mayor, city council, superintendent, school board members that would come together and talk about overlapping issues. So when you have a school closure, when you're talking about issues like putting your police officers back in the schools, those are some of the kinds of things where the two bodies should have been talking to each other. But, during the time that I was on city council, came back in 2011, I think we met maybe 5 times in that 12-year period. That's not enough. I think that vehicle should play that role in addressing some of those kinds of issues. But I don't think Denver should ever look at trying to take on control of Denver Public Schools. We've got enough issues and challenges with all the agencies that exist within the city. And I think we look at what can we all do to make recommendations that make DPS function better.
Thanks, Joe. Your thoughts?
I'm grateful I don't cover public education. I am a product of Denver Public Schools.
Me too.
Yeah, I know there's definitely some heartburn about Mike Johnston's background as an education reformer and some of his donors, right? Reid Hoffman, major player in education reform, Michael Bloomberg. So there was this kind of concern. He didn't talk about it a lot on the campaign trail. And I think partially it was because he was very fixated on his message. And now he's very fixated on delivering on the first leg of that effort. But yeah, he did, obviously there was a lot of opportunity to talk about how is the school board failing us. And he did a couple times go out there and say, like, yes, the couple members need to be replaced in this election. I'm wondering, where we might hear about it again. Right now, it seems like he's very, he's keeping a distance. So I'll be keeping a close eye on it, because I know that's, everyone's asking, what did $2 million of Reid Hoffman's money buy him? And Mike Johnston would say, I'm a reformer, I can get things done. I'll be keeping an eye on it.
Okay. So last unfair question from me. If Mike were here and you wanted to tell him one piece of advice, and it could be something we've already talked about around homelessness or something we haven't talked about, what would that be? And I'll give you a second or two to think. We were not able to get to all the other audience questions. There were some other really good ones here, so thank you. Maybe there'll be some time to chat about that later or at future forums. And again, thank you to our audience here today and the folks online. But with that, what one piece of advice would you give, Joe, to the mayor?
Oh, I get to cheat because it's not really my, I'm an observer. I say have office hours for the media, every Friday, half hour. That'd be my piece of advice.
All right, good. Debbie?
For me, it would be, we need a recovery first approach with people who are homeless on our streets, so that we're helping them to deal with their addictions. And this is not to stereotype every single person that's homeless, but most of the encampments that we have, where people don't want to come in, where we have available shelter beds. We've been housing people in motels. Some of them have not wanted to come into motels. So the people who are addicted on our streets that have mental health issues, we need that recovery first approach, and that would be my suggestion to him.
First thing, I realize I really missed this, so this has been a lot of fun to be having a conversation today. So I'm going to shamelessly say, if you all want to have a conversation and want to reach out to TL@travisleiker.com. Stay in touch. I'd love to connect with folks who are thought leaders in the community. Secondly, with respect to the advice, I'm going to tell two quick stories. One, I called 311 to address the fact that my trash had not been collected in my alley for all of my neighbors. And the person on the other line said, well, why did you wait so long to report this? Another example is I requested a tree to help fill some dead spots on my tree lawn in front of my house. And we drilled the holes and prepped the earth for the soil for the tree, etc. And then the city delivered the tree. It was there one day and then it was gone the next. I called to find out what happened. And it was, your hole was not deep enough and it was not ready for this tree. So we just decided to do what was best for the tree. So my point for telling you those two stories is be solutions oriented. So that's my advice to the mayor. Be solutions oriented and help get to yes and help get to outcomes. Because right now it can be so mired in analysis paralysis, city governance, that you can't get something done. So what happens when we're trying to activate a safe outdoor space is two people complain, therefore it becomes adopted gospel in the neighborhood and it becomes the voice of the community, when there might be 100 other people who are saying, yes, this is a good idea. Focus on the yeses and focus on the people who are who are driven by outcomes, because that's where we're going to, I think, get to a better rhythm in terms of our city governance. It's because we just cannot get so mired in the vitriol, the hate, the disagreements, and the saying no, because nothing's going to get done.
Great. Well, that's a good way to end and great advice. And I'll just say, again, thank you for being here. There's lots of Dave's great eggs and bacon and potatoes if you can stay and you want to stay. And please join me in thanking this fabulous panel.